One of the most anticipated games this year has to be Warhammer 40k Darktide. I mean, it stole the show at Summer Game Fest with its brutal combat, its grimdark aesthetic, and the lovable cast of rejects that we get to play as. But this isn't the first time that we've seen Darktide. In fact, it was actually revealed back in 2020 and had a release date of spring 2022. Unfortunately for us, the global pandemic had other plans and the game was delayed until September 13th this year. Now, with the game launching soon, developers revealed there will be lots of changes between Vermintide 2 and this new adventure in the 41st millennium. So guys, this is everything we know so far as of the time of this video about Warhammer 40k Darktide. So let's talk about it. Warhammer 40k Darktide shifts gears from the previous two games in the Fatshark catalog to adopt a brand new setting along with new gear, new combat, new heroes, maps, and a big improvement to the gameplay loop. Now, all of these changes were things the developers learned from their time with Vermintide. When it comes to heroes in Darktide, well, let's just face it, you guys aren't one. Instead, you're a reject who is sent involuntarily to serve as an agent of the Inquisition to purge heresy from Tertium, which is a hive city that's the current target of Nurgle's latest plague experiment. Now, these rejects serve as the classes we get to choose from. The Ogryn, which is a supersized human descendant, the Zealot, who places her faith above all, the Veteran, who is a former Imperial Guardsman, and the Psyker, who draws their power from the Warp. Now, as someone who has played their fair share of Inquisitor Martyr, all of these feel very familiar and are right on the money for Warhammer 40k. So hopefully we'll see some great perks and a variety of skills for each reject to keep them interesting. The developer did mention that they're designing these heroes to be less about pure killing efficiency and more about what they can excel in or how you want to build each class. For instance, if you take a Ripper gun, you're going to be able to mow down low-level enemies with ease. But once you run into an armored opponent, that gun immediately loses effectiveness and you need a team member to step in and take over. But honestly, the largest addition to classes that we know about so far is the character creator. One of the restrictions Vermintide 2 had was a lack in player choice for the heroes themselves outside of cosmetics. Every hero looked fundamentally the same. You couldn't change Victor to look like a completely different Victor. Now with Darktide, Fatshark has added a character creator so players can truly create the reject of their dreams. You can choose from different faces, details, and even some backstory for each reject to truly create someone that you're connected to and invested in. Combat in Darktide will feel like quite a departure for longtime Vermintide fans, as the game will feature a balance between ranged and melee combat. You won't have to rely solely on hand-to-hand battle in order to cleanse the lands and take down specials and elites. Instead, you can opt into an auto gun or a las gun to really get into your element and build the reject that you want. Now granted, you're not going to be completely deprived from the rush of melee combat. You'll still be able to swing a chainsword, smash skulls with a thunderhammer, or even use that large Ogryn knife, among many other options. But that also allows enemies to take up more ranged attacks to help even the playing field. Now, the developers talked about this, and this was a big problem that they originally encountered, so they decided to add something called toughness. So to help protect against this, each reject will have their own shield that will block a few ranged attacks before you become stunned and take serious damage. Now the shields themselves work exactly the same. There isn't a special shield for Ogryn versus a special shield for Zealot. Instead, they're explained differently in lore. For instance, the Zealot's shield is her faith in the Emperor protecting her, while the Veteran's armor is his shield and the Psyker's warp power serves as theirs. It's a nice little lore nugget to explain how these things work. Now, in terms of enemies, we do have confirmation that the hordes will be larger in Darktide than they were in the previous games. And while we don't get to fight Nurgle for obvious reasons, we will get to see enemies like Poxwalkers, corrupted Imperial Guards, Chaos Ogryn, Chaos Hounds, and maybe even a Plague Walker or an Unclean One. We do know Chaos Spawn will probably be in the game considering they were in Vermintide, so those ones we can assume will be added back in. But honestly, as for the other two, we'll have to wait and see. but from what we know, we will have quite the variety to crush into the steel floor. In my recent 2022 review of Vermintide 2, one of the cons that I had for the game was a lack of change or variety in missions and levels. If you play through each one multiple times, you can get fatigued pretty quickly. Now, Darktide aims to change this up a bit by detaching missions and objectives. Instead, your objectives are going to change and evolve as you play through the mission. Each area will have a different thing to do, which requires a different approach. We've seen an example of skulljacking, which is a very 40k way of saying hack into this computer. So we know there are others, but this is honestly the most prominent one that we've seen so far. We've seen lots of examples of skulljacking. Now, these objectives have been changed into minigames as well, so no longer will you just hold down a button to do something. Instead, you need to complete a minigame in order to finish the objective and proceed. Overall, their goal with detaching these is to give more variety to the players and keep them engaged for longer periods of time. Now, another welcome change is that the maps that you'll play through will evolve over time too. No longer will you see static maps with the same encounters. You may find that events like a gas leak have cleared the area out of inhabitants, or maybe it's been taken over by another faction that you need to go in and eliminate. This helps keep a sense of surprise for players rather than them knowing what exactly they're fighting against every single time and then stacking their party to steamroll through it. So that's what you do while you're out on missions. What about outside of missions, that precious time in between? Well, when you're in between missions, you're going to return to the starship that serves as a player hub, which includes other random players, which some people will and won't like. I know this is going to be a big topic. So if you think of like the tower in Destiny, where you see other random folks, and these people you can either party up with, you can check out their fashion game, they're going to be other players out there. We're not sure how populated it'll be, if it'll be another 4 or 5, if it'll be 10 or 20, I'm not entirely sure. But that's not the only thing that you're going to see in the starship. You're also going to see NPCs, places to modify your loadout and gear, collect rewards, or purchase things in the cosmetics store. Which, yes, there will be another premium currency store where you can buy weapons and character skins, just like in previous games. Now, our last big module we need to chat about is the progression and loot system. So what does it look like to take your reject from 0 to hero? Well, honestly, we don't know quite yet. What we do know is that there will be a leveling system that we can climb from expendable to not so expendable in the eyes of the Inquisition. So hopefully we'll see something a little bit more engaging than a simple experience bar, but honestly, we'll have to wait and see what they have in mind. Now that brings us around to loot. In Vermintide 2, loot is earned by finishing a mission and then earning chests at the end. The loot you get there is completely randomized, so that means you might need to grind a little to get that new flail or new shield or skull splitter that you're after. Alternatively, you can also craft some gear to help fill in those glaring chinks in your chainmail. But with Darktide, this has been overhauled. Loot is still earned at the end of missions and is random, but you also have an in-game shop that you can spend in-game currency in. So don't worry, guys, we're not talking about spending real money or anything like that to buy items. That's purely in the cosmetic store. This is more at the end of a mission, you earn credits, take those credits back to the store and purchase things from a vendor. So typical affair here. But that's not the only way to earn gear. If you're really struggling to fill in a slot that needs to be upgraded, you can also take on contracts. And these contracts will allow you to earn certain weapons while playing. This helps give a guaranteed approach to getting an upgrade in case you've been on the short end of the stick too many times. If you need a new auto gun and you're just not getting that drop, pick up an auto gun contract, complete the objectives, and suddenly you have a brand new and shiny way to just purge hordes of poxwalkers. So while we don't have any information on crafting quite yet, we do have a quote that helps give us some extra details on the extent that we'll be able to adjust our loadouts. Quote, as we've seen in Vermintide, players really enjoy tweaking their loadouts, says creative director Anders de Geer. And since we have a lot of great modders, they also want to tweak individual weapons, talents, and other stuff. So we're working with a system right now that'll allow players to have way more freedom than they had in Vermintide to customize their loadout when they go into a mission. So it sounds like we're going to have quite a bit more to customize and tinker with than we did in Vermintide, which hopefully means an even deeper gear and talent system than we've ever seen before. Like most things, time will tell if this is truth or not, but for now, this is what we know and it's something that we can look forward to. So folks, that is everything we know so far about Warhammer 40k Darktide. The game is shaping up to be something really great, and I hope that, for once, the hype is worth the wait. Warhammer 40k Darktide will be releasing on September 13th for Xbox and PC, and it will be available on day one for Game Pass. Now, if you want more Darktide content, please hit that like button to let me know. And if you like looters, shooters, and action RPGs, consider subscribing because that's what my channel is all about. And lastly, if you want to support the channel beyond a subscription, check out that join button below to see some extra perks that you get. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Vulkan, and I'll talk to you guys next time.